Hi guys, this is Anna and welcome to my channel. In this video I would like to conclude my April reads of 2017. There will be some books which I do have on the paper. One of them not been translated into English yet, so it's just in Russian, and then some of them will be electronic. So I think I'm gonna start with the two literary magazines which I have read, so I can get those quickly out of the way. The first one is super short. This was Persephone by Annually, so I received this twice a year from them. I think this is issue number 21, Spring Summer 2017. I found this really good. It has a really nice preview of the newest edition, the books they're about to publish, which really piques my interest. I do fancy reading them. It did have quite a nice introduction sort of to more German literature, which is quite timely because I am trying to read more of the German literature. So those are the two books which are coming out. Well, probably now. I was meant to go to London this weekend, this week while I was on half term, but it just didn't happen. But I quite fancy it because this Effie Press book, which is a new translation from German, I do fancy purchasing from them. So yes, if you are a reader of Persephone books, I would highly recommend actually registering on the website, because once you register and purchase a book from them, you will always receive one of these. And then the second magazine I have read was The Slightly Foxed, and this I believe is a spring number 53 issue, which is a great thing I have finished since I have just received on the 31st of May the issue number 54, which is the summer one. So this one is spring. I really enjoyed this. I gave this particular issue 4 out of 5 stars. I want to read so many books recommended here. There are some essays which I was more fond of than the others. There's one called The Circus Tricks, which is devoted to Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy by John le Carré. My husband absolutely loves John le Carré. There's really nice introduction to the Hilary Mantel, Giving Up the Ghost. This is the book I have also purchased in April, as I've shown you in my April purchases. So I am planning to read it. There is really nice introduction to War and Peace. So those of you who are doing the read along for War and Peace, it's really nice. Talks about the translation, the problems with the translation. I did find it quite on the surface. I didn't really delve too much, but then I am a lover of that particular piece of fiction, so I know quite a lot about War and Peace already. But if you're not, this might be quite a gentle introduction. There's lots and lots of books which have been published in the 1930s and 40s mentioned here, which I never heard about. I've never really seen them on a booktube, but now I want to investigate further. So yes, 4 to 5 stars. I have then read more of the Euripides. You know my project, trying to read more of the original classics. So this is Euripides Volume 1. It's the first volume out of 5 of the Euripides volumes published by the Chicago University Press. I have read Achlestes and Medea, the first two. Achlestes I've read actually in March, but then when I recorded the video in Russian, some people did say, well, maybe you should talk about it. I really enjoyed Achlestes. Achlestes is more of a comedy rather than a drama, so that was the third piece out of the 3 performed in the original competition, when in ancient Greece the 3 people chosen to compete in a year each had to stage 2 dramas and 1 comedy. It wasn't really comedy, but you were allowed slightly different rules. You had a big chorus, and there are few of those which survived up to this day written up. So Achlestes is an exception to the rule in this respect, and I found it to be extremely timely. It actually struck me just how current that particular work fiction is. Basically the premise is there was a king of the country who was friends with Apollo, and because he was of great service to Apollo, Apollo was really kind. He was feeling really generous in the evening, and he said, well, to thank you for your lovely services to me, my friend, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you cheat death. So instead of dying when you were supposed to die, I'm going to give you this get out of the jail clause, basically this special card, so you can have someone else to die for you, and therefore you will live longer. So what he decided to do would be brilliant indeed, is to ask his parents, because they're elderly and surely they already lived enough, and who cares for elderly people to die instead of him. And they said, oh, no, thank you very much. We give you life, we fed you. Why should you expect from us this ultimate sacrifice? So then he went to his wife, and his wife, Aclesta, went, all right, I'll die for you. So as a result of all of this, she's deemed to be the perfect wife in history henceforth, because she was willing to die for her husband. So she basically dies for him, and a couple of days after her death, when his entire house is shrouded in black cloth and they haven't, like the women had shaven their hair and everything, his other friend, he has lots of good friends, Hercules, rolls in. Between his 12 wonderful fists of bravery, he had enough time to come visit his friend, and he lies to Hercules, and he says to him, well, actually, like, someone died in my house, but don't worry, go and feast. So the guest is going to the guest quarter, Hercules is having lots of wine, lots of food, while the poor husband is grieving. And then Hercules goes, he suspects that something is just not right, like, where's the queen? Why is his friend not being with him? So he asks the guest, and the guests break the news to him, saying that, well, she's dead, she died for her husband. So he saves her from the death. He goes to the kingdom of Hades and saves her, and happy end, hence it's the comedy. But what I found really interesting is that the king has the audacity to go to his parents and reprimand them for not willing to die for him. He goes like, oh, if you really loved me, you would have done this willingly. Basically like a 13-year-old. If you ever watched Harry and Perry or Harry Perry Go Large, oh, I hate you. Basically it's the same. He throws a tantrum and his father goes like, look, I give you life, I fed you, I raised you, I even retired early so you can enjoy being a king. What else do you want? He goes like, well, but you're old. If you're old, like, who cares? Like, who gives a shit about your life? You're not used to the society. And I find it really, really timely, because now we live in a society where so many people are actually elderly. We have more elderly people than young people. It seems it's only going to go more problematic. So it's the question of, doesn't matter if you work or you retire. Do you think you're still of value to the society? If you're not directly of value to the society, surely your previous contribution should matter. This whole dialogue I found really, really, really fascinating. I really enjoyed the book. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And then I went and read Medea. And this deals with the time in Medea's life where she already settled with her partner. They're not legally married. She gave up her life in her previous country because she helped her partner to get the golden fleece. So we follow in the events, following the Argonauts. So she lives with him in this marriage. They're basically civil partners. They're not even civil partners. They're not married by any means. But in the eyes of the other citizens of the city, they are married because they've been together for so long. They have children. They have several boys together. But over the time, he grows tired of her, and he decides that to strengthen his position wouldn't be better to ally himself with the princess of the city they live in, because her father owns this whole area, so he's more powerful. So basically he forgoes his wife and he moves in with the king as a partner to the king's daughter, basically leaving her and her entire life in ruins. She gave up everything. She gave up her family. She killed her brother for him. And we meet her at that point when she cried her eyes out and she's angry. She's absolutely fuming. And then the king, basically the father-in-law of her partner, comes in and reprimands her, and she has a whole tantrum on him, and she's like, I hate you and I hate your daughter, blah blah blah. So she puts herself in the position when she cannot even stay in her house with her children. She now has to escape. And we all know what happens in Medea, and she ends up killing her children. And I found it really psychologically interesting. I mean, how much can you push a woman to give up her identity and then shred her as an old piece of cloth and then expect her to be somehow happy about it? Which brings me to another book, which I also read in the month of April, and I surprisingly really enjoyed. I have never read anything else by Claire Fuller. The book is called Swimming Lesson. It just came out this year. I have requested this on a NetGalley. I was rejected. but I went and purchased this myself, and I thought like, yeah, I'm gonna like it, but probably not that much. I ended up giving this 4 to 5 stars, and I found that reading this particular book along Medea made perfect sense, because there's some bits in the plot which to me seem to be a continuation of each other. So we meet the heroine of this book, who ends up marrying her professor at the university, and she marries him because she falls pregnant after the affair. She's literally like final exams away from getting her degree in London, but because they had this illicit affair, he gets fired, she gets thrown from university, so she sacrifices her entire future, she sacrifices her university degree, and she's in a foreign land because her family lives in Norway, her aunt lives in Norway, she doesn't really have parents, so she has very few people to ask support from. And this book is written really fascinatingly, so it has a nice unwinding structure. We know that she has disappeared, leaving her husband and her 2 children behind. We don't know whether she died or she just moved on. All we know is that her husband, like 20 years past, he's still looking for her. He was always older than her, but he's now a really old man. And his daughter and both of his daughters, they basically move in to look after him. What he's looking for, he has fallen down, he had an accident, he has fallen down and he has a bit of a memory loss and he has cancer, he's dying. But what he's looking for some of the notes which his wife, it seems to have left throughout the house, stuck into the books. Because he has a really fascinating hobby. Throughout his life, he used to collect books. He was not interested in books, he was interested in the commentary, in the notes, and the tickets some people used to stick into the books. Little cartoons people draw on the side, some pencil drawings, some pencil notes. That's what he was fascinated. So his house is basically a museum of old books. And it will take a lifetime to go through each book individually. Even if you knew that those letters existed and were stuck in the book, he didn't know that. He kind of came across one of them on the day when he had an accident, because he thought he saw his wife through the window and he rushed to see her. So we get to see narration through the voice of the wife when she was younger, and see how their life unfolded. And the ending is quite open. You don't know, did she disappear or did she commit suicide? Because she used to go swimming into the open sea. But her life, I mean, her life was not a life of roses. She married this man because she had to. She was barely of age, pregnant, and he wanted to have 6 children. So we get to see how she's stuck in the countryside. She has to forgo her friends, move into the countryside with him. He has notorious cheating life, so he openly cheats on her pretty much. She knows that he cheats on her, and yet he still wants to have more and more children. They're extraordinarily poor. She goes to see her best friend in London because she saved some money. She purchased some decent clothing, she purchased the baby carrier. She goes into London, this horrible journey in the train, the baby's crying. She doesn't know what to do with the baby. Only for her friend not to be ecstatic to see her, not know how to deal with the baby. And this is the contrast with the light. Like, she sees that and she realizes that her life is passing her by. And I felt it was so poignantly written. And it was so timely. She gave up everything for this man and he could not even appreciate her. Maybe he has loved her in his own way, but his love was a very selfish one. And he wanted to have 6 children and she didn't. So the stuff she was doing, this silent act of rebellion, which she continued to do, I really enjoyed Swimming Lessons. I did not expect to like this book as much. I read it electronically and then I went on and purchased it. And one of the reasons I purchased it is because throughout the book, she writes those letters. She did a writing degree. That's how she met her husband, who's an author. And she had to give up her career, but she still has this voice. So what she does, she writes these letters and she puts them in books. And she doesn't just put them in any book. We're actually told what letter goes in what book. And I've checked, some of the books actually correspond to the information given in the book, in the letter she has written to her husband. And I have read very few of those books. So by purchasing this, I can now investigate more, play with this. I am going to read this again in the future because I liked it just as much. people in this book are absolutely, like, her husband is just horrific. Her best friend, what a cheating slut. The act she's forced to do towards the end of the book, or the, I'm not going to tell you because I'm going to ruin the plot, but I would highly recommend this book, because it's been nearly 5 weeks since I've read it, and the more I think about it, the more I like the book, and I keep coming back to that. It leaves me with 2 more books to mention. One of them I read electronically, and again, I'm really surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and that's Small Hours. I'm going to insert picture here. That is a debut novel which I have requested in the NetGalley. And the book is written really interestingly. It follows the life of the husband and wife, and they have 2 twin daughters. They live in a suburb of the New York sort of American dream life, and you basically follow the life throughout a 24-hour period, and you realize that the life is not the bed of roses, and there are lots of things which go behind the scene, and it's not at all what it seems to the outside, and they're not really happy with the life. But what I really enjoyed about the book is not just the psychological aspects and the way the characters were portrayed, but the pace of the book. Because you basically follow the circadian cycle of the husband and wife. There are slower pieces, and then there are faster, sort of more cathartic things where stuff actually happens. And it seems to correspond to the natural biological rhythm of those people. So you have 2 periods, one in the afternoon and one close to the evening, when a lot actually takes place, and you realize a lot about the background of the characters or how they resolve some issues. And then there are some of the slower paced bits when they're tired, or like early in the morning, or then. And I found it really interesting. I have not read anything which was done in that respect. I think it took a lot of time for the author to actually rework her fiction, trying to fit it in that particular way. I really enjoyed it. For the debut novel, it's a very exciting new voice, and I'm definitely going to be checking out more work if that and when they're published. There's some stuff in this book which was predictable, obviously, but it's not about the plot as such. It's about how characters actually deal with the stuff thrown to them, and whether they're gonna grow up and own it up. I gave it 4 not 5 because I think the female character and her past was not described as well as her husband. I would have preferred just to see a little bit more, like maybe 1 or 2 pages, just to get a little bit more information about why she had the anger management issues in the way she did. But that book really made me think, like, do I want to have children? Because it's a lot of sacrifice. I mean, yes, it's also a lot of happiness, but it's a lot of sacrifice. And they did not expect to have twins at all, and they wanted everything as an American dream, and they all wanted to have everything at once. And then the financial crisis happened, so they end up living in this suburb, and the husband has a double life, and when it unravels, it hits them hard. It hits both of them quite hard. So yes, I will recommend The Small Hours. I also have read the Paris Review issue 218. I completely forgot about this one. I don't know why I forgot about this one. Oh yeah, probably because I really did not like it. Part of it is because that particular issue was devoted entirely to poetry, and I'm not really big on poetry, particularly poetry in English. I find the poetry in Russian rhymes a lot more, where the English poetry is very difficult for me to read. I'd much rather listen to someone else read it, because of the musicality behind it. It's a completely different school of thought compared to the traditional Russian one. Obviously, I was brought up in the Russian poetry, so I don't know, it was not for me, and it kind of put me off reading anything in that in a Paris Review, because it's so big, it's lots of advertisements, they're quite expensive to buy even electronically, and the text wasn't that much for me. So 2 stars out of 5. Finally, one of the best books by far I have read in the month of April was this particular tiny edition, which unfortunately has not been translated into English. This is by a very prominent Russian author, Alexander Kuprin, who wrote in the second half of the 19th century, and This is parts autobiographical. It's called Junkera or Junkers, and it's about a young person, how he grows and grows up. You see his personal development through the military academy, and it portrays Moscow in the way it used to be in the late 19th century, sort of 1860s, 1870s. And it's beautifully written. The language is absolutely fabulous for anyone who likes Russian classics. It's just such a shame that this book has not been translated. The food, oh my god, the food in this book is amazing. It's very close to Gogol. I mean, Gogol is renowned for his very detailed description of the feasts, and in this book, I mean, some places I was salivating right, left and center. It was just so good. You definitely see the character growing up, and he changes in the way his personal language changes, is really well described. One day when this one is translated, I highly recommend you pick it up. Anything by Alexandra Kuprin is really lovely. So yeah, if anyone is watching my channel who is into the translation business, with the revival of the love for the Russian literature now on the booktube, there will be market. So yes guys, this is it for the month of April. As I have said before, that was a really good reading month for me, definitely better than May. May was just really slow, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you have read any of the books mentioned, please let me know in the comments down below. See you guys in the next video. Happy reading!